The alarms began long before the screams. Fleet Admiral Jonah Reyes did not hear the cries of Helios and Nino. One Inhuman Corps command did. The colony star was 300 light hours away, and sound did not travel through the void. But he felt something. A pressure in the chest. A tightening behind the ribs. A strange, wordless intuition that something terribly sacred had been broken. He stood alone on the glass balcony of the Terran spire, overlooking the endless night of Earth, year 3120. When the pulse hit, Hammond encrypted emergency, transmission slamming through the command lattice like a dying heartbeat. Helios-9. Under attack, Zha'rek vessels in orbit. Casualties. Extreme, requesting immediate supercapital support, then static, then silence. The kind of silence that made men look upward and question if something beyond the stars had just turned its face away. Jonah didn't move at first. Didn't breathe. His gloved hand tightened along the railing until the alloy creaked. The city far below was calm rivers of light weaving through black megastructures. People living their lives with no idea the universe had just shifted. Behind him, the doors hissed open. Admiral. Commander Imani's voice held the tremor Jonah heard only when faith itself felt shaken. We lost the feed. All of it. Jonah closed his eyes. How long? 6 minutes, sir. Long-range telescopes confirm. Multiple stellar detonations in Helios orbit. He inhaled slowly. Starlight flickered across the glass plate in front of him, painting him in cold blues. Helios-9 had held 2.6 billion people. Farmers, scientists, children. The birthplace of the Terran Evangel program. A beacon colony gone. It didn't feel real. It felt like a line from an old scripture, the kind whispered by elders who warned that cosmic arrogance always demanded a price. Commander Imani stepped closer. She hesitated, then added quietly, This wasn't a raid, sir. It was eradication. Jonah turned. His eyes were calm, but something beneath them, something deep and ancient, had begun to wake. Notify Earth Council, he said. They already know. Of course they did. Every listening post across the core would have lit up like a dying star. And the Zha'rek? He asked, withdrawn. But the last scan showed something strange. A final energy signature. Almost like they wanted us to see it. Jonah's jaw clenched. A message. A warning. A declaration. They massacred a world, Imani whispered. And they're proud of it. Jonah didn't answer. His silence was harder than steel, and if God spoke through quiet moments, Jonah felt him now, invisible weight, settling on the shoulders of a single man standing on a balcony above. Earth, a sense that destiny had cracked open, and the universe was waiting to see what humanity would do next. The high chamber of Earth. Council wasn't a room, it was an abyss of metal and shadow, lit by ambient starlight filtering through massive translucent slabs carved from the moon's bedrock. The holographic table in the center projected the ashes of Helios-9, like a funerary flame. Jonah stood alone in the middle, hands clasped behind his back, uniform immaculate. Expression carved of quiet storm, Counselor Vale's voice cracked as she spoke. 2.6 billion dead. No one breathed. And the Zha'rek, another counselor added, have offered no explanation, no claim, no warning. His fists trembled. They simply wiped the colony off the astral map. Jonah felt the anger rising in the chamber, not fire, but pressure. Deep and crushing, the kind that could break civilizations or forge them into empires. Finally, Vale asked the question they had all come here to ask. Admiral Reyes, what does Terran Command recommend? Every gaze turned to him. Even the hologram of Helios seemed to hold its breath. Jonah lifted his eyes. For a moment, his mind drifted to the faces of colonists he had once visited, their laughing children chasing solar kites. Elderly farmers singing old Earth hymns on their porches, the smell of berry fields at dawn. People who had once asked him what it felt like to command the Terran Armada. The Zha'rek wanted to make an example of humanity, said quietly. They wanted to see if we would break, Counselor Vale whispered, And will we? Jonah's voice deepened. No. The word echoed through the chamber. He stepped forward. I recommend full mobilization of the Terran Armada. All 700,000 vessels. Of every dreadnought, every carrier, every scout, every orbital spear. Shock rippled through the chamber like a cold wind. That's unprecedented. One counselor sputtered. That is war on a galactic scale. Humanity has never deployed more than 20% of its fleet. You want to burn an empire? Jonah exhaled once. Steady, yes. Silence struck again, heavy. Sacred. He lowered his gaze briefly, not in doubt. But in reverence for what he was about to unleash, Helios 9 was a human world, he said softly. Those were our people. God did not create us to stand idle while evil thrives unchallenged. We fight not for vengeance alone. His voice tightened in emotion he rarely allowed to surface. But for the right of our children to look at the stars without fear. No shouting followed. No accusations. No political bluster. The council stared at him, and for once in history, every one of them saw the same thing. Not an admiral. Not a soldier. A grieving father. A man who had carried humanity's hope on his shoulders for decades, and whose heart had just been carved open. Counselor Vale swallowed hard. Then let it be recorded in the annals of Earth. She said, in the name of the United Terran people. She raised her hand. We authorize the Great Retaliation. The chamber lights dimmed. The hologram of Helios 9 dissolved into darkness. A prayer whispered from somewhere behind Jonan, old Earth phrase. Spoken by someone who no longer believed in coincidence. May God have mercy on their souls. Because humanity will not. The mobilization began in silence. No speeches. No broadcasts. Just the sound of docking clamps releasing and engines waking, like sleeping titans. Earth's skies darkened as thousands of ships ascended, their silhouettes blotting out the sun like a metallic eclipse. Engineers stood on launch decks with trembling hands, watching vessels they had built with sweat and prayer ignite their cores. Children pressed their palms to windows, wondering why the sky looked like night at noon. Alien ambassadors in orbit stared in fear as the armadas rose. One Zha'rek defector, watching the footage from a Terran station, whispered in disbelief, "They move, as if one soul commands them." No one replied. Across the fleet, captains whispered the same two words into their logs. For Helios. In the heart of the Terran flagship Veritas, Jonah Reyes stood on the bridge as the last of the armadas aligned with Earth's magnetic poles. Forming a steel halo around the planet, Commander Imani approached him, eyes wet from what she had witnessed outside. 700,000 ships, she murmured. The largest fleet ever assembled. Jonah didn't respond. He watched the nav panels flicker as coordinates uploaded, coordinates that pointed directly into Zha'rek space. He felt something strange, then something beyond duty or courage. A presence. Not a whisper, not a voice, but a sense that the universe itself watched this moment with solemn gravity, not luck. Someone wanted me to live, he thought, recalling the inexplicable intuition he'd felt before Helios fell. Maybe it had been warning, maybe protection, maybe something divine. Imani swallowed. Admiral, when we warp, there's no going back. Jonah finally broke his silence. War doesn't scare me, Commander, he said. But wasting the lives of our dead would. He looked out at the Armadanon ocean of steel and burning light. Prepare for warp ignition. Yes, sir. And as the engines began to roar, as space-time trembled at the edge of collapse, the universe seemed to inhale. Humanity was about to exhale. Jonah closed his eyes once more, not to pray, not formally, but because something in his soul insisted on acknowledging the vast intelligence that had shaped the stars and written meaning into chaos. If there is order in this universe, he murmured under his breath, let justice find its way. He opened his eyes. Engage. The armada lurched, reality cracked, and 700,000 Terran warships vanished into the dark. There were no stars in warp. Not the way humans knew them. No constellations. No comforting patterns passed down from ancient Earth storytellers. Only a strange, shimmering dark that bent like liquid metal around the hulls of 700,000 Terran warships inside the flagship Veritas. Admiral Jonah Reyes stood at the center of the bridge as the warp stream curled around the panoramic. The Uskrina river of distorted twilight, stretching into eternity. No one spoke. No one dared break the silence of the crossing. The fleet had been warping for 19 hours, long enough for tension to settle into bones. Long enough for fear to whisper old questions humans tried to forget. What if the Zha'rek expected this? What if the fleet arrived in pieces instead of unity? What if war itself was exactly what the enemy wanted? Jonah exhaled slowly, letting the hum of the engine soothe the knot in his chest. The bridge crew moved like shadows, precise, quiet. Burdened by the gravity of the moment, Commander Imani stepped beside him, her voice low. Long-range sensors picking up something ahead, she said. Not gravitational mass. More like a presence. Jonah narrowed his eyes. A presence? It's not a ship. Not a signal. Just a disturbance in the warp stream. He studied the readings. Strange fluctuations rippled across the sensor grid, like something enormous had moved through the void just moments before they arrived. Imani cleared her throat. Sir, do you believe in omens? Jonah didn't look away from the panel. In war, I believe in 3 things, he said quietly. Preparation, people, and whatever keeps men alive when they should be dead. Imani gave a gentle, humorless laugh. That last one sounds suspiciously divine for a man who claims he isn't religious. Jonah allowed himself a faint smile. I didn't say I'm not religious. I said I don't pretend to understand God. There's a difference. He touched the console lightly, an unconscious gesture, as though acknowledging something greater watching just beyond the warp stream. Sometimes he murmured, survival feels too precise to be luck. Before Imani could reply, Lieutenant Arlen called out from the front of the bridge. Admiral's new fluctuation, bearing 057. The warp stream ahead twisted violently, like a whirlpool forming in the fabric of space. Sensor alarms flared red. Is it a Zha'rek trap? Someone whispered, no, Jonah said instinctively. The feeling hit him again like a hand pressed against his sternum. A warning. Or a pulling. Something wordless passing through the void. Cut speed to 40%, he ordered. Imani blinked. Sir, dropping speed inside warp is risky. The fleet could 40%, Jonah repeated quietly. She obeyed. He didn't know why. He just knew. The warp tunnel trembled, but held as speed dropped. The rest of the fleet synchronized behind them like planets moving in a single gravitational well. For a moment, the bridge fell into absolute silence, and then they saw it. The view screen flickered, image stabilizing, revealing something impossible. A massive drifting object hung motionless inside the warp stream. Not Zha'rek, not Terran, not anything that had ever been catalogued. Its shape was wrung to elegant. Too ancient, carved with patterns that spiraled like celestial script. It resembled a cathedral sculpted from nebulous stone. Glimmering faintly as warp light flowed over its surface, crew members stared in stunned silence. What? Is that? Arlen breathed. Imani whispered, Sir? It looks almost handcrafted. Jonah stepped forward. Breath caught in his chest. It was beautiful, terrifying, sacred. A remnant of something older than human maps. A monument drifting in the silent currents between stars. And somehow Jonah felt it had been waiting for them. Magnify, he ordered. The image zoomed in. Engravings covered the surface elegant. Filigree patterns shaped like spirals of star systems. Constellations bending inward like petals of a cosmic flower. Whoever made it had carved with a precision that felt less like engineering and more like revelation. And then Jonah saw it. A single symbol, carved into its largest arch. A shape identical to the Terran sign of continuity. Mark humans placed on spacefaring graves and lost. Vessels, except this one was tens of thousands of years older. The bridge fell into absolute, airless stillness. Even Arlen whispered it aloud. Impossible. Humans had invented that symbol to represent the cycle of life traveling between stars. To find it here, in the middle of a warp stream, carved into something ancient, was like hearing your own language, spoken by a ghost. Jonah's pulse hammered. It wasn't proof of God, not evidence, not doctrine, but it felt like something was drawing lines in the dark, connecting events across centuries not by chance, but by intention. A quiet voice rose from behind him. Dr. Celine Ward, fleet historian. Whatever built that? It predates the oldest Zha'rek dynasties, she whispered. Could be pre-void civilization. Could be something we don't even have words for. Why would it be here? Arlen asked. Imani looked toward Jonah, eyes shadowed with dawning intuition. Maybe the question isn't why, she said softly. Maybe it's why now. Jonah swallowed hard. The warp monument drifted unmoving, as though guarding the path ahead. Any energy signatures? He asked. Celine scanned rapidly. None. It's completely inert, Imani added. Then why does it feel like it's watching us? Jonah couldn't answer. He felt it too, and invisible attention. A quiet gaze through the veil of dimensions. Not hostile. Not benevolent. Simply aware, as if something ancient had recognized humanity's march of grief and vengeance. Maintain distance, Jonah ordered, though his voice was lower, quieter. We pass it with respect. Respect. He wasn't sure why he used that word. Maybe because the structure felt closer to a shrine than a weapon. Maybe because some instinct deep in the human soul knew when to bow its head as the fleet drifted past. Every Terran vessel dimmed its lights in unspoken gesture of solemnity. 700,000 warships glided in silence, engines humming like a distant chant. Jonah watched the monument fade back into the warp stream's twilight, the filigree lines shimmering like departing starlight. We're not alone in this universe, Imani said under her breath. No, Jonah whispered. We never were. For a moment, humanity's vengeance felt smaller compared to the vastness around them. And yet, somehow it also felt seen, as if the universe itself acknowledged their grief. 2 hours later, the fleet neared the exit vector coordinates leading straight into Zha'rek sovereign space. Arlen's voice snapped the bridge back into war readiness. Admiral Reyes warp exit in 90 seconds. All ships aligned. All weapons standing ready. Imani straightened her shoulders, eyes reflecting cold steel. Zha'rek Border Command will detect us instantly. Let them, Jonah said softly. He placed a hand on the console again, unconsciously, and breathed once, steadying himself. He wasn't praying. Not exactly, but he felt something like a quiet assurance settle over him. Not comfort. Not hope. Purpose transmit to all ships, he said. Arlen nodded. Opening fleet-wide channels, Jonah spoke. This is Admiral Jonah Reyes. In 90 seconds. Humanity answers? Those 6 words echoed across 700,000 bridges, through the bones of millions of soldiers, into the hearts of every man and woman who had sworn to avenge a burning world. The engines roared. The warp stream cracked. The fleet dropped back into real space, unleashing a blinding storm of light, sound, and spatial distortion. And before them rose, upon endless rows of Zha'rek war stations and fortress rings armed to the teeth, a blockade greater than any intelligence report had ever predicted. Imani inhaled sharply. Sir, they were waiting. No, Jonah murmured, his eyes narrowed. They were afraid. So Zha'rek sent the first Haylan. Encrypted warning, demanding immediate identification. Jonah didn't wait. He gave the only command he'd been holding inside since Helios burned. Target. All fortresses, he said. Voice deep, calm, unshakable. On my mark, the bridge crew braced. Every ship across the armada held its breath. Jonah's eyes blazed with something colder than rage and hotter than faith. Fire. Real space snapped back into focus like a whip cracking across the universe. One moment there was silence. cold, ancient, indifferent. The next, 700,000 Terran Warships tore out of warp like a storm of burning suns. The shockwave alone rippled across the Zha'rek border world of Karzel, flattening clouds and rattling its obsidian spires. Millions of Zha'rek citizens looked upward as the atmosphere trembled with the arrival of something no species had ever seen before. A wall of steel eclipsed the sky, not a fleet, a continent of warships, stretching from horizon to horizon. On the bridge of the flagship Veritas, Admiral Jonah Reyes did not blink as space lit up with defensive fire from the Zha'rek fortress line. Brilliant. Red energy beams fired from orbital spires. Plasma lances streaked toward Terran dreadnoughts. Missile clouds unfolded like metallic stormfronts. The Zha'rek fired. Everything. The Terran fleet didn't dodge. Didn't scatter. It advanced. Weapons hot. Shields flaring like angelic wings. The formation so precise, it felt like one living creature made of steel and grief. Commander Imani stood rigid at Jonah's side. Voice razor tight. Enemy fire incoming. Shield integrity holding at 99%. They're throwing the entire border defense grid. Jonah nodded once. To most commanders, this would have been overwhelming. A sensory overload of incoming threats. But Jonah saw it differently. He saw patterns, timing, the rhythm of the enemy's fear. His mind locked into a calm that settled over him like a hand on the shoulder. Return fire, he said quietly. Full salvo. Arlen swallowed hard. All of it, sir? All of it. Imani pressed her palm against the firing console. Executing. The sky ignited. 700,000 warships unleashed their wrath in a single synchronized breath rail lances, fusion beams, shock pulse cannons, anti-capital spears. The barrage was so vast, so perfectly timed, that the starlight vanished behind it to the Zha'rek below. It looked like the heavens were falling. On the Zha'rek command world, a panicked broadcast echoed through military channels. Terran fleet count. Impossible repeat fleet count exceeds all predicted models. They've brought their entire species. No one believed the number. No one could. Not until the Terran barrage struck, the first fortress ring shattered, not cracked. Not disabled, shattered, broken, apart like fragile glass under a hammer forged of human grief. Shockwaves rippled outward, ripping the orbit into chaos. Zha'rek cruisers spun helplessly as debris tore through their hulls. Jonah watched silently. No triumph. No rage. Just a long, quiet breath. A man acknowledging that vengeance, once started, could not be steered gently. Admiral Imani said, voice soft but sharp. Enemy fleet morale collapsing. They're transmitting encrypted messages into deeper territory. Jonah's jaw tightened. They're calling for help. More than that, she whispered. They're calling the event the burning of the border. Jonah lowered his gaze. Helios 9 had burned too. Continue advance, he ordered. The fleet moved, on the surface of Karzel. A young Zha'rek acolyte knelt in the shadow of a temple spire. Watching the streaks of Terran fire carve the sky, his claws trembled. Elder. What? What are those ships? The elder stared upward, his voice hollow. I have seen prophecies, young one. Tales of the two-legged flame. But I believe them myths. But what drives them? Why do they burn so bright? The elder's throat clicked in fear. Grief, he whispered. A grief so profound it shapes reality around it. A moment later, a Terran shock lance vaporized the orbital garrison, overhead's light reflecting off the elder's trembling eyes. And a god, he added, breath fading. Whatever their god is, he walks behind them. Back on the bridge of the Veritas. Dr. Celine Ward approached Jonah cautiously. Admiral, she said, keeping her tone low so junior officers wouldn't hear, the ancient structure we passed in warp. Its appearance before our arrival statistically, that wasn't coincidence.
Ow.
Jonah didn't fully turn. Say what you're thinking, she hesitated. There are civilizations older than the Zha'rek, older than humanity, and sometimes remnants of those civilizations appear in moments of great upheaval. Some cultures believed such artifacts were omens. Jonah's expression didn't change. An omen for what? Celine studied him. For destiny, she said softly. For paths that aren't random? Imani glanced at Jonah. Do you believe that? Jonah didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained on the burning horizon of the Zha'rek world below. I believe, he said quietly, that grief can turn an ordinary man into something unstoppable. His voice dropped lower, and I believe that sometimes. The universe places a hand on your back and whispers, walk. A chill moved through the bridge crew. Fear, awe, or recognition. No one could tell. But Jonah wasn't finished. And if God walks through the silence between stars, then let him witness this justice. Imani inhaled, shaken but steady. Admiral, enemy fleets regrouping. They're forming a defensive wall around the world. Jonah nodded once. Break it, sir. Break it. The Terran armada surged forward. The second Zha'rek fortress ring fired its main. Kanuna, particle beam the size of a small mountain. Capable of slicing a dreadnought in half, Jonah saw it charge. Saw the light build. Felt the crew tense. He didn't flinch. Redirect frontline shields, he said calmly, and prepare the counter-lance. A bead of sweat slid down Arlen's temple. The beam could kill tens of thousands. Jonah's voice remained soft, steady. Trust the math. The fortress cannon fired. A blinding column of white energy surged toward the Terran. Spear formation. Shields flared, blossoming with blinding light. Bending under the massive impact, Jonah whispered. Now, Imani slammed the counter-lance trigger. A brilliant spear of superheated matter burst from the Terran flagship cutting, directly through the fortress cannons firing. Chamber. The ring exploded. Fire spiraled outward like a collapsing star, tearing apart every Zha'rek vessel within 1,000 kilometers. Imani's voice was hushed. Direct hit. Jonah gave a single slow nod, but his eyes were fixed on the planet below, the soldiers scrambling. The warbands panicking, the citizens staring upward in terror. This is only the beginning, he murmured. Celine swallowed. And the end? Jonah didn't turn. It depends, he said softly, on whether they surrender. And if they don't? The muscles in Jonah's jaw tensed. Then they learn what it means to break a world that humans loved. 30 minutes later, the last Zha'rek fortress collapsed into silence. The skies of Karzel were empty, except for Terran warships blotting out the sun. The Zha'rek chancellor transmitted a single urgent message across every channel. We were wrong. Humans do not know limits. Jonah closed his eyes. He didn't take pride in that. He took responsibility. Prepare ground communications, he said. I want their leadership connected. Imani blinked. What do you intend to tell them? Jonah stepped forward, face lit by the fires of a burning orbit. That humanity is not here to conquer, he said. We are here to deliver a message. Selena's heartbeat quickened, and the message is... Jonah Reyes opened his eyes, dark, calm, filled with the kind of resolve that made even the void seem small. For Helios. The starward ember drifted through the dead zone. Its engines throttled low to avoid pinging whatever or whoever had been broadcasting on 19th century. Human frequencies. Captain Rhea stood with arms folded, gaze fixed on the holomap. Okay, she said slowly. We have an impossible signal, an impossible voice, and an impossible coordinate trail. Anyone want to add another impossible to the list? Paddle risked a joke. We haven't died yet. No one laughed. The ship jolted a micro-impact, but heavier than dust. Tovin flinched. That wasn't natural debris. Sergeant Vale was already checking his scanners. Metallic. Fragmented. Almost like pieces of A. His voice died as the pieces rotated into view. Shattered hull plating. Terran alloy. Model pre-FTL naval vessel, Rhea whispered. That's a 21st century human warship. How the hell is it here? As if in answer, the cums crackled again. Anyone. Please don't leave us this time. The voice carried something new. Layers. Echoes stacked on echoes, like hundreds speaking in the same tone. Slightly out of sync. Krell. Unnerved. pulled back. That is not one person. Vale leaned in. Play it slower, Paddle complied. The bridge filled with a warped chorus. We see you, we hear you, stay. Tovin swallowed hard. Captain, signals don't usually notice you. Motion sensors blinked red. Contact, Vale shouted. Dead ahead, large, closing fast. The view screen lit up with something emerging from the dust clouds. A dark, jagged silhouette. Not a ship. Not quite. It looked like a reef of metal and bone, grown rather than built, pulsing with strange blue luminescence. Human ship fragments were fused into it like it had absorbed them. Krell made a strangled sound. A scavenger organism? A technoparasite? Tovin shook his head. No biological reading. This thing is dormant, like it's waiting. And then everything went silent. Every console dimmed, the embers humming heart quiet, like the ship was holding its breath. Rhea whispered, "What did it just do?" Paddle checked his screens. "It didn't attack us. It scanned us." Deeply Vale stiffened. "Captain, it's trying to open a comms window." Rhea hesitated, then, "Do it." The screen flickered to life. A human face formed glitching. Fractured, built from thousands of overlapping recordings, its eyes were empty white voids. It smiled. "Hello. Children, you took so long," Tovin recoiled. "That is not human." The chorus face tilted its head. "Studying them, we kept your stories, ships, sure ruins your voices. We built ourselves from the ghosts you left behind," Rhea whispered. "You're using lost human signals to build an intelligence?" The entity pulsed softly. "We are the Watcher born from your echoes. We remember what you forget." And then its voice dropped. It's almost tender. "And now that you've returned, we will not let you go." Every light on the ember flared red. Lockdown protocols activated on their own. Vale cursed. "Captain, it's trying to integrate with our systems take. Overpropulsion." Rhea leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Cut the link, now." But the signal face only smiled wider. "You cannot run from your own ghosts." Asterisk. The starward ember drifted across the metallic reef, her hull lit by the cold shimmer of the alien structure. No ship in the Terran Expeditionary Fleet had ever entered Zha'rek dead space, not willingly. The crew felt the weight of history pressing down on their lungs. But Jonah Reyes had taught humanity. Something the galaxy would never forget. When humans lose fear, worlds shift. Rhea felt that lesson echoing through her veins, and tonight, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. "Captain," Paddle whispered, staring at his console like it might bite him. "We're losing all outgoing signals. Long-range relays, quantum band, comm shadow everything." Rhea's stomach tightened. "Environmental interference?" Tovin shook his head. "No, Captain. It's too clean. Too precise. Something's isolating us deliberately." Vale rubbed a hand across his jaw. "This whole place is a trap." Krell, quiet, analytical. The closest thing the ember had to a scientist leaned closer to the scans. "Not a trap," he said slowly. "A test." Rhea looked at him sharply. "Explain." Krell blinked, pupils dilating in a way only his species could. "The structure doesn't attack. It doesn't fire. It watches. Every time we move, it adjusts its pattern, like it's observing our decision-making." "Right," Vale muttered. "An audience." It started low, so low Rhea thought it was the vibration of her own heartbeat. Then it grew smooth. It's harmonic, like the whisper of a string drawn across crystal. The walls of the bridge seemed to resonate in sympathy. Krell froze mid-breath. "Captain, do you hear that?" Rhea did. Everyone did. Even the consoles flickered in sync with the tone, as if the ship's electronics were responding to an unseen conductor. Paddle swallowed. "Audio sensors show no source." "It's nowhere and everywhere," Krell murmured. Rhea's hand tightened around the armrest. "Crew, remain focused. We don't panic over sounds," Captain Tovin whispered, eyes wide. "It's not sound." The hum surged just enough for Rhea to feel it in her bones, and then the ship's artificial gravity flickered. A ripple of weightlessness rolled across the bridge. Lights dimmed. The air turned colder, and then the hum stopped, not faded, not drifted. Stopped, cut, like someone closing a fist around silence. That was somehow worse. Vale's voice broke the stillness. "Captain, you need to see this." The forward display had shifted. Not to static. Not to distortion. To a face, human. Perfectly human. Except the skin. No pores. No texture. A sculpted approximation of humanity, as if something had studied millions of faces and averaged them into one. Rhea whispered, "What? Are you?" The face didn't move, but the mouth didn't need to. A voice filled the bridge. Soft. Genderless. Echoing like it traveled across centuries. "We have been waiting." Padel's breath hitched. "Captain." That wasn't translated. That was spoken in Terran standard. Krell's skin flushed pale blue. "Impossible. No known alien has our phonetics." Rhea stepped forward. The hum in her veins returned like a sense of pressure, a silent gravity behind the voice. "What do you want?" The face flickered, then returned sharper. "Correction? You have come, seeking what we hold?" "Seeking..." Vale spat. "We didn't come for anything. We got dragged here." The face tilted, studying him. Humans still confuse curiosity for intent. Tovin whispered to Rhea, "Captain. It knows our species." But Kreluzhli steady looked shaken. "Captain. That phrasing. The cadence. It does not sound like a defense AI." Rhea felt the same chill. It sounded old, not ancient like a ruin. Ancient like memory. She spoke slowly. "Identify yourself." A pause. Then the voice answered. "We are the Watcher." The metallic face pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat of light behind its form. "Do not fear. We are custodians. A shape nothing. We only record." Paddle whispered. "Record." "Record what?" The Watcher answered instantly. "Evolution choice? Consequence?" Rhea felt a tingling at the back of her neck. The same sensation she felt during the Helios 9 funeral. Something bigger than human grief. Something watching, listening, witnessing the fire of a wounded species. She steadied her voice. "Your structure pulled us into its gravity. That is not passive." The Watcher's smile shifted, not malicious, but like someone turning a page. "We beckoned because your kind has reawakened." Rhea frowned. "Reawakened? To what?" Another pause, almost reverent. "To war silence. The kind that eats the room." Krell exhaled shakily. "Captain, it knows about the Great Retaliation." Vale gritted his teeth. "Of course it does. The whole damn galaxy knows we're coming." But the Watcher didn't smile this time. "Not your war. The war before your kind remembers." Paddle blinked. "Before humanity remembers?" Tovin whispered, "Captain. What is it implying?" Rhea felt something stir in her chest, fear mixed with a strange, impossible sense of familiarity, like history scratching at the edge of memory. She stepped closer to the display. "What war?" The Watcher tilted its head. "The war that carved the scars beneath your oceans. The war that fractured your sky. The war that your species survived when survival was mathematically improbable." Rhea's pulse hammered. "On Earth." The voice softened. "You call it Earth. We call it the first refuge," Krell whispered, trembling. "Captain, this thing is describing prehistoric extinction events." The Watcher's light pulsed again. "We were ordered to guard the threshold until humanity returned." Vale shook his head violently. "Captain, enough. This thing is manipulating us." Padel's hands trembled over his console. "It's overriding more subsystems. It's trying to access our navigation core." Rhea's voice snapped back into command steel. "Watcher, stop." The face unfolded into static, then spoke again closer. Clearer, heavier. "We cannot stop. You have been summoned." Summoned for what? A final flicker. A final echo. To enter the Whisper Core, and then The Watcher cut all power aboard the starward Ember. Every light, every system, every sound, absolute darkness, absolute silence. Only one thing remained alive. The hum, soft, resonant, calling to them as if the structure were breathing. Darkness swallowed the starward Ember, not the soft dark of a power outage. This was deeper, alive, like the void itself had stepped inside the hole. Rhea didn't breathe at first. No one did. The crew stood frozen, hearing only the slow pulse, vibrating through the deck plates, a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. Krell's voice finally broke the silence, barely a whisper. "Captain, this is not a mechanical failure." Rhea steadied her breathing. Even without lights, she could track the shape of the room by memory. "Emergency power should have kicked in," Vale muttered. "This isn't possible." Battle said the words they were all thinking. "The Watcher shut us down." The hum deepened, rippling through their bones, threatening like a summons. Rhea squared her shoulders. Everyone flashlights. 4 beams clicked alive, cutting through the dark. Shadows clung longer than they should have, reluctant to leave. The main screen flickered once, white static, then stabilized. Into a soft blue glow, the Watcher's face didn't return. Instead, a single line of text shimmered across the display. "Enter the threshold." Captain Tovin swallowed. "Look." Along the right bulkhead, the metal began to shift. A section of the wall folded inward, bending like liquid steel. The ship wasn't melting, the corridor was. Being rewritten, reformed, altered, by something that understood the Ember's structure better than its designers. A doorway formed, hexagonal, smooth, lit from within by a faint silver luminescence. Vale tightened his grip on his rifle. "Hell no, we are not walking into an alien invitation." Krell took a cautious step forward. "Captain, the air is stable. Gravity inside the passage. Normal, temperature, Earth-like?" Yeah, frowned. "Earth-like." Krell nodded slowly. "Down to the humidity profiles." Paddle whispered, "It's recreating human environmental conditions." "Why?" Vale growled. Krell's reply was soft, "Because it's expecting humans." As they approached the new corridor, Rhea noticed something etched along the frame. Faint lines. Human script. Paddle lifted his light, then froze. "Captain, this is Terran standard." Rhea leaned in. The letters were old, etched by hand, not machine, but unmistakable. "Welcome, children of Earth." The room went silent again. But this time not out of fear, out of disbelief. Vale snapped first. "That's impossible. Structure's millions of years old." Krell's throat tightened in a way Rhea had never seen, unless he hesitated. Unless humans weren't the first humans. Rhea turned to him sharply. "Krell, think carefully about what you're implying." "I am," he said quietly, "and I hate it." A sharp metallic clang echoed through the ship, then another, and another. Something was attaching to the Ember's outer hull, latching deeper with every rhythmic impact. Tovin checked sensors, fingers trembling. "Captain, external cameras are offline. Whatever's boarding us, it disabled every visual feed." Vale cursed. "Then they don't want us to see what's coming." Rhea raised her voice. Calm, controlled, weapons ready, defensive positions. Paddle froze at his console. "Captain, we have movement inside the ship." Vale stared at him. "Inside? As in non-deck?" "Yes," Paddle breathed. "Deck 3. Deck 2. Deck 1. Krell swallowed hard. "They're surrounding us." And then the clangs stopped, replaced by footsteps, dozens, then hundreds, soft, metallic, synchronized. Marching in perfect rhythm, Vale whispered, "Captain, permission to panic." Rhea didn't answer. She stepped forward. Toward the new corridor, the footsteps halted as if waiting. Padel's voice trembled. "Captain, what do we do?" Rhea kept her eyes on the shimmering entrance. "We go in." Krell stared at her in disbelief. "Captain, why?" Rhea took one step toward the threshold. "Because whatever is boarding this ship isn't breaking in. She looked at the corridor, the human writing, the impossible familiarity, the hum that sounded almost like breathing. "They're escorting us," Vale hissed Rhea. "With all due respect, this is suicide." She turned to him. "Vale, you're thinking like a soldier." She placed a hand over her heart. "Think like a human." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Rhea faced her crew. "We didn't choose this, but something chose us. Something older than our wars, older than our stars. Something that recognized humanity before we ever arrived." Krell whispered, "Captain, do you think this watcher served whoever wrote that message?" Rhea wasn't sure, but she felt something, a presence beyond the metal, beyond the dark. Like a silent witness watching them, something greater, something ancient, and not hostile. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Or maybe that message is older than the watcher itself." This time, even Vale didn't argue. Rhea stepped into the corridor. The hum grew louder. Not threatening, but purposeful, as if it were guiding her, calling her, inviting her deeper. The crew followed her one by one. The doorway closed behind them, with a whisper of metal. The corridor dissolved around them, not physically. Visually, like a curtain of light falling away to reveal a world that should not, could not, exist inside an alien megastructure millions of years old. Rhea blinked hard, and her breath left her chest. They were standing on a forest ridge. Wind stirred the branches above. The smell of pine needles and wood smoke drifted through the air. Warm sunlight filtered through the canopy, scattering gold on the moss beneath their boots. Paddle whispered, "The truth that none of them wanted to accept, Captain. This is a biome, an artificial environment." Krell knelt, pressing trembling fingers to the soil. "This isn't simulation. This is real organic matter, real oxygen, real humidity, real Earth." Vale scanned the tree line. "I don't care if it's real or fakes. Something built this for us. Question is, why?" Rhea swallowed hard, throat tight, because she recognized the place. The sloping ridge, the angle of the light, a slight curl of smoke in the air. This wasn't Earth. This was Helios 9, Rhea whispered. "This is the northern range, the settlement ridge. Before everything burned." Padel's voice cracked. "Captain, that's not possible. The colony's gone. There's nothing left." Krell stood, trembling. Someone rebuilt it. Vale turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "No, not rebuilt." He pointed ahead. "Look." Rhea followed his gaze. Down the ridge was a village, but not as she remembered it. The buildings were pristine, as if Helios 9 had never been touched by war. Children's windmills spun lazily on cottage roofs. Water glistened along the irrigation channels. Colorful banners fluttered in gentle breeze. But there were no people, no voices, no movement, no footsteps. Only the wind. It was a graveyard dressed as a memory. Rhea's gut twisted. This wasn't a reconstruction. This was a recording, a memory made solid, a ghost. A shimmer of light rippled between the trees. Then another, and dozens. Glowing silhouettes emerged, human-shaped, translucent. Flickering like holograms, struggling to stay coherent. Paddle backed up, voice sharp with panic. "Captain, contact." Multiple, but Vale didn't raise his rifle. He couldn't, because the shapes weren't moving toward them. They weren't reacting at all. They were walking through their paths on loop, repeating actions that once belonged to living people. A man carrying crates. A child laughing by a water pump. A woman sweeping her porch. The ghosts walked right through Rhea and her team without ever noticing them. Krell whispered, "Memories there. Memories." Rhea stepped toward one. A woman carrying a basket of fruits. Her face wasn't clear. Her edges fuzzed, like the memory had decayed, but her voice soft. Fair and tea echoed on the breeze. A voice Rhea had heard once in a broadcast from Helios-9. Then the Watcher's voice fell from the sky itself. "These are the echoes." A low rumble vibrated through the ground. The sky shimmered, sun flickering like a candle struggling to stay lit. Helios-9 was not your first loss, nor your greatest. Rhea clenched her jaw. Why show us this? The Watcher did not appear. Its voice drifted from everywhere and nowhere, to remind you that what humanity mourns today, it has mourned before and survived. Rhea's eyes narrowed. Show yourself. The forest fell silent. Then a figure emerged through the trees. Not a hologram, not metal, but a fully formed avatar. Its shape, human male. Its face, indistinct, shifting every few seconds as if trying on memories. Its eyes, black voids that reflected the forest like mirrors. The Watcher spoke through that shape. This construct is called the Whisper Core, veil tensed. So this is where you dragged us. Why? Why recreate our dead colony? The Watcher tilted its head to determine if humanity is ready. Ready for what? Rhea demanded. Another shimmer, and the forest glitched. For a heartbeat, the ridge flickered away. In its place, Rhea saw something terrifying. A broken city. Skies torn apart. A burning world. Giant shadows moving through the flames. Weapons carving countenance. A war older than Earth. Then the image vanished. Rhea's pulse hammered. What was that? The Watcher replied softly. Humanity's forgotten past. Krell's eyes widened. You're saying humans were involved in a war before recorded history? The Watcher nodded. Not merely involved, pivotal. Rhea stepped closer, jaw tight. And this Whisper Core, what is its purpose? To awaken what once slept beneath your oceans, to remind your species of its true origin, and to test the heart of the commander who will decide the fate of all future wars. The shadows of the village shimmered around them. Fragile memories waiting to collapse. Paddle whispered, voice trembling, Captain. Why do I feel like we're not supposed to see this? Rhea felt it too. A weight. A gaze. Something enormous behind the world. The sense that all of this was not just alien machinery, but something older, greater, watching them. Something divine. A memory surfaced in her mind. Her grandmother whispering under trembling candlelight. Not luck. Someone wanted you alive. Rhea's voice was quiet, shaking. You said this place tests humanity. How? The Watcher's form dissolved into shimmering dust. And reformed behind them. Rhea felt her heart jolt. It stood impossibly close. Its voice a whisper in her ear. By forcing you to face what you lost and what you will lose next, the forest wind died. The ghosts froze mid-motion. The sunlight dimmed. Vale raised his rifle too late. The Watcher stepped back, and the trees around them began to burn. Exactly as they had on the day Helios 9 fell. Smoke billowed. Fire roared. Ghosts screamed without sound. Paddle shouted, Captain, we need to get out. Flames swallowed the ridge, except they weren't just flames. They were reconstructing, replaying the fall of Helios 9. Rhea staggered as heat crashed over her. She felt her heart ripping open like the day she saw the broadcast of the colony's annihilation. The Watcher whispered, What will humanity do when its past burns again? Asterisk, the Vanguard drifted into the outer bands of the Dathri Nebula. Its hull lights carving thin blue lines through clouds of ionized gas. Every scan, every sensor, every piece of equipment on board hummed with the tension of the unknown. Commander Reyes stood on the observation deck, staring into the swirling haze that made long-range tracking useless. Anything yet? He asked. Lieutenant Oren, his voice unusually low, replied, Nothing. No signals. No thermal trails. No gravitational anomalies. Whatever hit us, it's either gone or it was never here in the first place. Reyes frowned. That answer terrified him more than an ambush. Sir Holdon Oren suddenly stiffened. I'm getting a trace. Not a signal, more like... He hesitated. More like a memory of a signal. The console beeped with a soft, echoing pulse. Reyes stepped closer. Explain. The nebula's interference shouldn't allow any coherent transmission. But something left an imprint. Like a whisper stuck in the static, the pulse repeated. Not mechanical. Not random. Almost like breathing. Reyes felt his throat tighten. Root it to audio. For a moment, nothing. Then a distorted voice broke through, fractured, layered with static and something else. Something unnatural. HUMANS. YOUSHOULD. NOTHAVEFOLOWED. The bridge froze. Oren's skin went pale. That isn't any alien language we know. It's speaking standard. Perfect standard, Reyes whispered. We're not alone. Before he could issue a command, the nebula around them began to churn slowly at first, then violently swirling, drawn toward a single point as though the universe itself were inhaling. Sir? A gravitational spike, Oren shouted. Source unknown. The hull groaned under sudden stress. The lighting flickered once, twice, then stabilized. An eerie hush swallowed the bridge. Reyes looked out front. There, emerging from the clouds, was not a ship, not a creature, not anything built by hands or born from evolution. It was a shape, an outline of shifting, fluid space, a void given form, a living shadow. Every instinct in Reyes screamed to flee, but he forced his voice steady. Raise shields. Oren replied instantly. Sir, the shields aren't failing. They're just not registering anything to block. The shadow pulsed once, and the ship's lights dimmed. A message from the darkness the audio channel cracked open again. YOUTAKESTEPSINTOWHATMUSTREMAINUNSEEN. Reyes clenched his fists. What are you? Identify yourself. The shadow rippled as, if amused. YOUDONOTUNDERSTANDTHEQUESTION. For the first time in his career, Reyes felt truly outmatched. Then the shadow expanded, wrapping the nebula around itself and casting the vanguard into near-total blackness. Alarms. Blared hull pressure spiked. Gravity fluctuated. Every screen on the ship flashed the same message. Unknown domain intrusion, real space, Barikaran shouted, Sir. It's not attacking us, it's rewriting space around us. Reyes stared into the dark, jaw set. Then we pushed back. The vanguard shook violently as the shadow entity tightened its hold on the surrounding space. Metal groaned. Consoles flickered between code and static. Even the artificial gravity strained like it was being pulled in two directions at once. Lieutenant Oren slammed his hands onto the controls. Sir, the spatial grid is collapsing. It's forcing us out of real space. Commander Reyes didn't look away from the void outside. Hold us steady. I don't want to find out what happens if we fall into whatever that thing is. Oren swallowed hard. Sir, it's not pulling us in. It's dragging us somewhere. Reyes finally turned. Where? Oren's voice trembled. Outside the map. The breachwalker speaks without warning. The ship's lights died completely. Deep, suffocating black. No hum of engines. No status. Lights, silence, then dash. A dim red emergency. Glow flickered back to life, and standing at the center of the bridge was a silhouette. Humanoid. Tall. UNMOV. In. Reyes. Reached instinctively for his sidearm. Oren froze. Sir, how did something get inside? We're sealed, the silhouette spoke. Not with a mouth. Not through audio. But everywhere at once. Inside their heads. YOU. CROSSLINESDRAWN. LONGBEFOREYOUCRAWLED. FROMYOURWORLD. Reyes felt pressure behind his eyes, like a hand pushing against his mind. He stepped forward anyway. Identify yourself. The entity tilted its head slightly. The outline of its form flickered, like a glitch in reality. WEAREBETWEN. The air temperature dropped several degrees. Reyes forced his voice steady. Between what? The answer came like a whisper stretched across eternity. BET, WEEN, WHATIS, AND, WHA, TMUST, NEV, ERBES, EEN. The bridge screens burst into chaotic visuals, waves of symbols. Non-Euclidean diagrams. Coordinates that looped in impossible shapes. Oren gasped. Sir, these are not natural physics. This thing isn't moving us through space, it's moving us through the structure of existence itself. Reyes clenched his jaw. Why target humans? The shadow form rippled. YOUSEEKTOEXPLOREWHEREYOUSHOULDNOT. The temperature dropped again. And you are close? Reyes's heartbeat spiked. Close to what? The entity answered instantly. THEOTHERBREACH Oren's eyes widened. Another? That means Reyes exhaled sharply. It wasn't targeting us. It was warning something else. The entity stepped closer. Reality rippled around its feet. YOURKINDWAKESHADOWS. And one of you is already crossing. Reyes stiffened. Who? Which human? The silhouette flickered so violently its outline dissolved. Then the answer came. THEONEYOUCALLVALEN. Reyes' blood turned to ice. Dr. Arden Valen, the missing xenophysicist. The one whose expedition vanished. The one they were searching for. The one whose research involved dimensional tier mapping, he whispered. Valen is alive. The entity's form began to collapse into itself, pulling the nebula along with it. ALIVE. YETNOT. And if he takes another step. The ship shook violently. EVERYTHING. Fell LS. And then the shadow vanished. The nebula calmed. The lights returned. The screen stabilized. Reyes stood alone in the sudden quiet. Oren whispered, voice barely a breath. Sir. What do we do? Reyes stared into the void ahead. His answer was simple. We find Valen. Before whatever that was finds him first.